Welcome to Reel Filmmaking. My name's Corey, and today we're talking about the Canon EF-M 15 to 45mm lens. The 15 to 45mm lens is a Canon EF-M mount lens, which means it fits with Canon's EF-M system. These cameras include cameras like the Canon M50, the M3, the M5, the M6 Mark II, and this lens generally tends to be a package kit lens with these cameras. So you might have gotten the lens as a package with one of those cameras, or you might have one of these previous mirrorless cameras and you're looking to increase your mirrorless lens options and have been looking at this lens. So today I hope to share some information about this lens, show you some pictures and some videos, and help you make a decision if the 15 to 45 is a good choice for you. The EF-M cameras have an APS-C size sensor, which means they have a 1.6 crop, which means that when you take the 15 to 45mm, it has the equivalent of about a 24 to 70 on a full frame camera. All that means is that this lens has a pretty good focal range for doing a variety of things. All the way wide, it gives you a pretty wide field of view, and then it can punch in at 45 and you can get a little bit tighter for things like portraits or if you really want to focus on a subject. Another thing that's great about the 15 to 45 is its size. In comparison to something like my iPhone, this lens is tiny. It's not a big deal for me to grab this lens and a couple other primes for my M50 and to just throw them in my backpack. So let's talk about build quality. The build quality of this lens is pretty good, all things considered. It is a plastic build. So, it's not any heavy metals here. It's not like kind of your solid, more expensive lens, but it's got good plastics in it. I've used lenses that feel way more plasticky and feel like they're gonna break. I don't feel that way with the 15 to 45mm. I feel like I can hit it around, I could drop it, and I think it would still be pretty good. The 15 to 45mm has an aperture of f3.5 to f6.3. So what that means is it has a variable aperture. That means when it is all the way open at 15, it is 3.5, but when it's zoomed in at 45, it's 6.3. This is something that you would have to compensate for, by changing your ISO settings, some of the other settings on your camera. And honestly, variable aperture is pretty normal for where this lens comes in price point wise. To get that fixed aperture all the way through a zoom lens, that is what you're paying money for, to get those higher optics in it. So to get like a Concept 2.8, that's why you pay thousands of dollars for those fixed aperture zoom lenses. Speaking of price, this lens comes in used nowadays anywhere from 80 to 100 bucks, and I think for that price, it's a pretty good deal. Like I mentioned earlier, this tends to be a packaged in lens with cameras like the M50, with the M6 Mark II. And I think as a packaged in lens, like especially with the M50, this is a steal. This is honestly a great lens, and I would highly recommend that. If you can find it used, I'd pick it up, but I wouldn't pay anywhere over like 100 to 120 bucks for this lens. It's a great lens, but I think once you get past that price point of about 120 bucks, there's other options that I would probably look at before I would look at this lens. Another good thing this lens has is IS, or image stabilization. So combine that with some of the digital stabilization that some of these cameras like the M50 and the M6 Mark II have. It helps just to stabilize your footage, especially if you are shooting fast-moving subjects or if you're doing some handheld video. It's nice to have that extra stabilization in these lenses. So I've talked specs and a lot of different things about this lens, but one of the things I think is most helpful in deciding if a lens is a good fit for you or what it can do is actually seeing photos and videos of what this lens can do. So I'm gonna take some time, put some images up on the screen, some videos, and hopefully this can help you to decide if this is a lens that you want to invest in, or if you own this lens, how you can really maximize it. So all in all, I feel like the 15 to 45 millimeter is a pretty good lens. I feel like it sits a little above average in terms of a lens that you would want to carry around. Like I said, having the 24 to 70 equivalent, like that range, that field of view, is really handy. I think this is definitely better than some of the previous kit lenses that I've used that feel way more plasticky or just like optically don't perform well. Like I feel like this lens is pretty decently sharp, you know, even from wide open to further closed down the aperture. And yeah, like I'm pretty pleased with the results that I get shooting with it. It's a lens that I can just grab and put on the camera and do a decent amount with it. A weakness I will say for this lens is shooting in low light, and that is kind of symptomatic of any variable aperture zoom lens. Because the aperture is variable and it's just slower, you know, 3.5 is not that fast, you're not taking in as much light, and so at night when you need light to expose images, it's just a constant struggle. And so struggling against being able to take in light versus cranking your ISO, you're going to get more noise and grain in your footage. And that's probably the one complaint I have about this lens. I would not shoot with it at night. And so because the 15 to 45 millimeter really struggles in low light, I think this lens is best used honestly outdoors doing nature photography, or in a controlled space doing video or portrait photography where you can really control the light and get as much light as you need. So that's everything I have to say about the 15 to 45 millimeter. If it's a lens you're looking into, I hope this video has been helpful. If it's a lens that you own, I hope I can encourage you by saying this lens is pretty versatile. You can do a good amount with this lens, and yeah, I definitely think it's worth keeping. So if you found this video helpful, if you enjoyed it, please hit that like. If you want more content like this about filmmaking, creative process, and storytelling, make sure to hit that subscribe button for weekly content. And until next time, keep making movies and watching movies, and I'll see you on Reel Filmmaking.